And that jarring cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast. And today we're continuing our mission to look at Doctor Who things that are Scottish, because believe it or not, this is a podcast from Scotland. This is a real accent. I'm not Groundskeeper Willie. I am Kenny Smith, and I'm joined by my pal who's sitting looking rather knackered, but he's all right. He's our Dr. John. Hello, John.
Hello everyone. Yes, I am knackered, which is the technical term, but I'm going to scintillate for you now because I always get a buzz and an energy hit whenever I talk about Doctor Who. So
absolutely. Here goes. Yeah, I think the Scottish word which I learned from Ur Wally was pecht.
Pecht? Well, that's a new one on me.
P-E-C-H-T. I think it's a Dundonian word for I'm knackered. I'm pecht.
I'm pecht. Right. Okay.
It's so Ur Wally. Yeah, absolutely. Get it in there, get it logged, and use it in a conversation tomorrow. So there we go. So today we are going to be taking a look at a big Finnish story, which is set in Scotland, rather than speaking to one of the Scottish contributors to our favourite show. And today we're going to be taking a look at Medicinal Purposes, which was written by Robert Ross and released in August 2004. So John, before I read out the back cover blurb, was this a story you had heard before?
It was a story that I'd heard a bit of, but I had never listened to it in its entirety until I sat down to listen to it, to talk about it on this pod. So yes, so I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to give it my full attention. But yeah, it's a fresh one for me. Back in 2004, I had drifted slightly away from Big Finish releases. I was aware of it coming out. Obviously, I'd seen it reviewed in Doctor Who magazine, but I didn't get to enjoy the full effect until very recently.
Well, I shall read out the back cover blurb. It tells us Edinburgh, 1827. The infamous body snatchers William Burke and William Hare are at large. The local prostitutes dull their fear with cheap whiskey. The graveyard owls are hooting. Business is good. When accidental tourists, the Doctor and Evelyn Smythe stumble upon one of Britain's most lurid, illuminating chapters in history, a simple case of interest in the work of a dedicated man of science, Dr. Robert Knox, quickly turns sour. Just what is the time-bending Scots mist? Whatever it is may put the very fabric of the universe under threat. As always. So, let's listen to the trailer, shall we?
Let's.
Doctor Who. Medicinal Purposes.
No one can shout, no one can shout, no one can shout when the doctor's about.
One little drop or maybe two of a night can't do you any harm. Keeps the cold out. This fog gets into your bones and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing at all. Apart from take a little drop or two of a night. Just a little drop or two. Oh, you start, my gents. Oh, it's you two. A cold night for a stroll, isn't it?
Have you forgotten your British folklore?
Obviously.
Daft Jamie, ladies of easy virtue, blood on the streets. It can only add up to one thing.
Yes.
Body snatching.
There's a stranger in town.
Indeed.
He's snooping.
Snooping, How, man?
He saw the blood.
He saw blood.
Doctor, you talk about Burke and Hare as though you're looking forward to meeting them.
Exactly.
But they're criminals.
Undoubtedly.
Murderers.
Absolutely. But maybe not yet.
So a stranger saw the blood you two left behind. So what? If he hangs around for a bit longer, he may see a darn sight more.
You two are such gentlemen. It must be a long time since anyone said that about you two. Good night to you both.
I don't think so.
You want to do business at this hour?
That could be one way of putting it, yes. No one can shout, no one can shout, no one can shout when the doctor's about. No, I can shout. No, I can shout. No.
Stop shouting. The doctor won't like you if you shout.
Capital. Don't you think so, Hal?
I could have done with a bit more screaming myself. You know how much I like it, sir.
More blood, Mary. Why more blood, Mary? Mary! Mary!
Well, there we go. That's kind of exciting, isn't it?
It is. It is. Full of atmosphere.
Absolutely. No one can shout, no one can shout, no one can shout when the doctor's about. It's I know it's stuck in my head since re-listening to it, and I've said it a few times to myself. So John, what sort of things did you know about sort of this historical period beforehand? Because I remember my dad telling me about Birkenhair when I was a wee boy, and I knew a fair bit about them. Obviously not full details, but they were not a pleasant pair of gentlemen, were they?
No, couple of scoundrels. I think my real opportunity to find out more about them came through treading the same streets. Actually, 160 years after when this story was set, I was living in Edinburgh when I was a law student. So there's lots of the town. In fact, Edinburgh is, as anyone who's had the opportunity to visit or spend time in Edinburgh will know, it's not really changed very much, and indeed that Birkenhair would be able to navigate their way through the wynds and side streets and alleyways of modern day Edinburgh. So I was aware of them, and as a student at Edinburgh University at that point, I was aware of their historical association with the School of Medicine there, and their very unorthodox ways of providing specimens for Dr. Knox and for the surgery classes. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. It's a grim old town when it rains, but I think it's beautifully captured in the audio. I could feel the chill in the air, and the chill of Edinburgh is a very particular thing, I think.
Very much so. I spent a couple of years in Edinburgh as a student between 92 and 94 when I was doing my journalism course at Edinburgh Napier University, as it's now called, rather than just Napier University. And you learn an awful lot about it, and these, like doing ghost walks and things like that, are fantastic.
Yeah.
And then it was in a bit early October 2002, we did a trip to the vaults and learned a lot about things in there. In fact, I remember the date because it was 3 weeks after my dad had passed away, and we're trying to do something sort of just to get out and do something completely different. And it was a bit much for my mum, I'm afraid to say. And
not something I would do if I needed it cheering up.
I just thought it'd be something different and a bit of learning, and sort of like, okay, if I'm feeling sad, I'll learn something new. So yeah, not my smartest idea, but we later went down to the Edinburgh terminal down in Leith and bumped into Jim Farry, who was the former secretary of the Scottish Football Association, who was one of my dad's great mates, and it was lovely to see him. And he just came and chatted to my mum for ages, and she remembers, so it was a nice thing to do. So, but yes, we're not here to talk about my dad's passing. We're here to talk about the murders of Birkenhair.
Yes,
he didn't get killed by Birkenhair. Can I just clarify that?
Yes, let's make that abundantly clear.
Absolutely. So this story, I remember when it was first released, I was quite excited because I was working at the East Kilbride News at the time, and the story was about some body snatchers and a story in Scotland, and I was thinking, I wonder if that could be related to the Hunter brothers, William and John, because they're obviously famous surgeons and have the Hunterian museums in Glasgow and London.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I wonder if it could be related to them, as I'd done quite a lot of stuff on the Hunters, and there was a little bit of mention of the grave robbing that went on by the Resurrectionists, and nothing to do with them. It was all Birkenhair, but I was still really excited.
Yes, it's a fascinating but slightly grim chapter in Scottish and medical. But yeah, it's very well realised, I think, and it's a fascinating story to be given this twist that takes us to very unexpected places, I think.
Yeah.
So it's a good vehicle for that.
A story about body snatchers isn't automatically something that you think is territory for Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about the 8th Doctor novel with the Zygons and Professor Lightfoot.
Indeed not.
I think it's a trip into darker territory. I mean, I don't know if the BBC would allow it these days, but back in the days when the show was off air, it was very different because obviously we've got prostitutes, there's the character of Daft Jamie, and you've got blatant murders, and straight away, those are 3 things that I think would probably struggle to get through compliance these days.
Yeah, definitely. I was struck by that it kind of it skirts around. I want to call her Nancy, but it's not. I've got my head in Oliver Twist at the moment.
I know who you mean. You're talking about Mary Patterson.
Yes, that's it. Yes. So it's quite clear what she's meant to be. There's a it's not entirely in your face, but it's surprisingly clear about what she's offering, and even what she's potentially offering the Doctor. Yeah, that's something I kind of thought. The show really hasn't gone there, and it's one of those bits of license that the audios perhaps were able to enjoy. Well, certainly back in 2004, but I think it captures a lot of that kind of. Well, it sounds quite patronising to talk about it as the underbelly of Edinburgh, but the same would have been true of all the big cities of the Empire, in Birmingham and particularly in London. I'm currently reading the accounts of the so-called 5 canonical victims of Jack the Ripper, called The Five, and it's a really interesting book. I'm realising I'm going off on a tangent here, but it does a really nice job of actually giving these women their lives back. They're so often just spoken about and reduced to prostitutes or sex workers, as we would call them now, and so on. And there's a lot of ambiguity as to whether that actually was the case with some or most of those victims. But the thing that really strikes me is just what a hard and terrible life not just those women, but the people around them had. Life came at you fast and didn't hold back. They were did you very few favours unless you happened to be wealthy and have other forms of material security. So I kind of had that in my mind as I was listening to the stories of these very vulnerable people, like Mary, and also to an extent Daft Jamie, who again perhaps a figure who would have been seen and looked at and looked after differently now, certainly compared to then. But anyway, maybe we could say a little bit more about that character.
I'll quickly give you the cast list, shall I? Because it's not a bad lot. So Colin Baker's the Doctor, Maggie Stables is Evelyn, Janie Booth is the Old Woman, Tom Farrelly, Billy Hare, Glenna Morrison, Mary Patterson, Kevin O'Leary, William Burke, Leslie Phillips, Dr. Robert Knox, and last and most definitely not least, David Tennant as Daft Jamie.
Who?
The name's familiar.
I'll have to look him up.
Maybe he became a doctor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what you're saying there about Jamie is very true. He's a character you instantly feel for. And you feel, I don't know if, I felt very protective of him straight away and just think, this is a guy who's been left to probably grow up and exist in effectively the Wild West, trying to get by and scraps. I did a little bit of reading about him, and people would pay him to entertain them and do daft things, and it's very exploitive, and it made me feel very uncomfortable reading it. And I think that you wouldn't get this sort of part now, but it is written very sympathetically and played very sympathetically as well. But it makes for uncomfortable listening.
Yeah, it's a part that would be, if we're talking about, how would this be approached now, even only 20 years later or so. It is a hard part to write, and it's a hard part to act. There was a little bit of me that kind of, I also did a little bit of research into Jamie, and clearly by today's diagnostic standards, he would be regarded as someone who was not daft, but was certainly neurodiverse or divergent. Someone who is clearly, had a kind of a hyper focus, a kind of a Rain Man character who would be able to, give you dates and days of years and those kind of calculations. So clearly, someone who, as I said, was anything but daft. And I suppose the challenge in writing that kind of character is getting us to care. Well, that sounds wrong to get us to care, but we would care, hopefully, about him and about all the characters. But because this is a quasi-historical, we know that these people don't survive, that he's going to be a victim, she's going to be a victim, and that's where a lot of the drama and the conflict within the listener or the audience arises, because that maybe if the 10th Doctor, whoever would go on to play him, would have come back and done a bit of Pompeii and said, right, okay, Jamie, into the TARDIS, and we'll drop you somewhere safe, and the same with Mary and so on. But we're still resolutely in the, you can't rewrite one line of history, and it just creates that added poignancy, I think, as you see that these people are being taken back to have their own timeline fulfilled, no matter how tragic and horrible that's going to be.
Yes, that is pretty much towards the last scene of the play, but it's so carefully done, and Colin and Maggie play it so beautifully, and you can tell that the Doctor's taking absolutely no pleasure in doing it. But as you say, you can't change history, not one line at this point anyway. Fixed point in time, that's how you probably describe it these days.
Yeah. Spoilers, by the way. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm sure that after 22 years, people have had plenty of chance to listen to it.
If it took me that length of time to get around to it, then surely you guys have already done so. So, yeah, but apologies if you haven't.
Let's talk about the other main guest star here. Bloomin' Leslie Phillips. Ding dong.
Ding
what
dong.
A fantastic part. And so brilliantly played, just with that effortless, charismatic charm that he brings to everything that he does. Or he did, I should say. Yes.
I didn't look at the cast list because I listened to it as a Big Finish audio download, so I wasn't holding the CD cover or anything like that. So just when I was listening to it, I thought that sounds like Leslie Phillips, but it can't possibly. And then as I listened, I said, no, it absolutely is. And a bit of a nod to GNT stunt casting, but again, like so much of GNT stunt casting, this works absolutely perfectly. That obviously you hear, and you can see him as he's delivering these lines, but there's also that undertone of menace, and there is something wonderfully disconcerting when lovable rogue characters have that little bit of steel in them. It provides a delicious contrast, I think. And so I think, it's great. It's great casting, and there's some great verbal sparring between the Doctors, and there is that little bit of ambiguity before it's all kind of revealed what the deal is with Knox. You kind of think, maybe he is a Time Lord, and this is his TARDIS, and then this is so and so. But so there's a bit of clever misdirection, which works very well.
I love the scene where the Doctor goes to confront Knox, and he just dematerializes his house from the surgeon's quarter. It's just gone, and then brings it back because he's popped off to get himself a coffee or something like that. And once he's been to Starbucks, then he's back and playing it with absolute relish. You can tell he's enjoying it, because obviously it's, as an actor in his later years, the chance to turn up and there's the script, just read it from there. But there's a part with a lot of depth to it, and there's some real just real focus to it. And as you say, he plays it very lightly, but as you say, the underlying menace, particularly when he's getting Burke and Hare to go out and commit the murders, and the fact that he's, rather than just requesting victims from the morgue, he's getting them to kill people. And as we discover, there's a lot more going on in the background with an entertainment value to it. And it's almost like, again, this is at the start of reality TV. Big Brother would have been on its 4th series in 2004, no, 5th in 2004. So it's, again, that peep show, looking in, observing others, and here they are carrying out murders, and how gruesome can they get? And it's like, and who's going to be evicted this week? It's you, William Hare. Thanks to Nina. So yeah, there's that element to it. It's not played up. It's quite subtle, but it's really nicely done with that bit of satire on entertainment and where things have gone since then. Yeah, who'd have believed it?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, there's lots to think about, and I think this is characteristic of the author. You know, giving us lots of things to consider in terms of like social questions, the kind of morality of what kind of sacrifices are we prepared to make in order to advance medicine, and these are still questions which we're posing, as long as you say it's for medicinal purposes. And again, that nice little pun in terms of like the little nip of whiskey. But you know, if you say, well, this is are these sacrifices worthwhile, given the fact that it's going to advance medical knowledge and surgical practice and so on. Yeah, these are little grace notes for those who want to engage with some of the deeper themes of the story.
Because I'd never particularly thought about what the grave robbers were nicking the bodies for, but it is there for medical science, and so that people can understand human anatomy, how the body works. And let's be honest, would we have things like heart transplants and surgeries and be able to do operations like that if we didn't have this knowledge? So as you say, it's a very, very grey area when it comes to that, when you look into the morals of it. But it's a fascinating one, and I think it's very well presented. It's not taking sides, and well, yes, it does make it clear that murder is wrong, but then it does ask, obviously, in these days before bodies could be donated for medical science. It's very, very interesting. Actually, I heard one of my friends had a friend who was a student who was doing human anatomy and things, and apparently Gordon Jackson had donated his body for medical science, and he was unable to do that because he'd been a big fan of The Professionals, so he couldn't carry out cutting up Gordon Jackson's body. So that's, when I think of that sort of makes me smile and just think something a bit moral there. But yeah, but it's such a fascinating area, because again, like you, I did a little bit more reading up on it because it got my mind thinking, and just having a look at sort of the evolution of the science and understanding of the human body and all these things, like when the first sort of internal illustrations of the human body and how it works and everything came together, and looking at early pictures of babies growing in the womb and things like that, and you just think, I don't want to think about that part of it, particularly the babies in the womb. It's just very difficult areas to how they got that knowledge.
But yeah, it's and again, this is one of our tangents here, but you're talking about entertainment and so on. We've in terms of reality TV, we've had live autopsies, and people rocking up to travelling exhibitions of plastinated bodies, where all of our internal plumbing is coated in plastic and put on display. It's a perennial fascination, that we are these immensely complex machines of flesh and blood and bone and so on. And when there's an opportunity to say, oh, look what's inside, it does fascinate us. So I thought we might have got, although it would have got us too far into the woods as well, around the doctor's own medical qualifications, because Glasgow is very proud of the fact that we have the second Doctor on screen saying that he did his medical degree at Glasgow. And the year escapes me, it'll come back to me. But they're very particular about, well, Lister, who did teach at Glasgow, but he wasn't teaching at that point, so therefore it must have been Edinburgh. And then in Tooth and Claw, I think, I've not watched it for a while, but I think he says something about studying at Edinburgh, the Doctor says, maybe in an attempt to correct it. But so as someone who studied at both universities, I'm kind of, I'm happy with either side in that kind of tug of war. But has anyone, you would know better than me, has anyone ever done a Big Finish or a novel that explores the Doctor's supposed undergraduate studies under Lister?
Nope, there's not been anything with Big Finish, and there's not been a full novel. That's not to say there's been a short trip published by Big Finish, but I don't remember any in the BBC Books range, and because I haven't read all the Big Finish short trips books, because I couldn't afford to buy them all of the time, because I just got my first flat, and I could afford my monthly CD in the days when there was one CD a month with the occasional Dalek Empire. And unfortunately, I don't know. But to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been. But that's not.
I'm going to do it now. Okay, you heard it here first, folk.
That's the Paul Spragg Memorial opportunity sorted for this year.
That's it. Okay, just you watch this space.
Tying up continuity. Now, you mentioned earlier the writer Robert Ross, who of course is really well known in comedy circles. And for a comedy script, this is just, I think it's so clever. It's so layered. There's a wonderful dark humour, particularly around Knox.
Black humour, yeah.
The Doctor's got some very good waspish lines, but Evelyn, I think, absolutely shines here as well. She's compassionate and just showing what a brilliant foil she was for the Sixth Doctor, and how brilliant Maggie Stables was, just so warm, full of heart, just amazing. Yeah. I mean, one of the highlights definitely of that era is the chemistry between the Doctor and Evelyn. Maggie Stables is, I think, a character that I wish we'd had on the screen. Although she does a fantastic job, obviously, in the audios. Just that kind of, I always liked that dynamic between the Doctor and this slightly more mature and sometimes more eccentric ladies, especially in the Tom Baker era. So I think she's a great foil, and gets a really good part to play in this particular story. Yep, the way that she performs with David Tennant as Jamie is very good. She's sort of that caring side of her as a university lecturer who looked after her students, and she brings that empathy so strongly to poor old Jamie.
Definitely.
I think that she's so missed, and I count myself as being very lucky in that I got to interview her for a fanzine years and years and years ago. So sadly I don't have the recording of it, but I did have my shorthand notes, so I was able to type it up. So there's so many interviews that I wish I had still, but Well, talking of interviews, shall we pause now and hear from the author, Robert Ross?
It's from Mr. Ross, yes.
Hello, I am Robert Ross, and I am the author and writer of Big Finish, Doctor Who Adventures, Medicinal Purposes, and Peer Pressure.
Fantastic. Do you remember how the commission for Medicinal Purposes came about?
I do. Fittingly enough, for writers back in the 90s, early 2000s, it was in a pub, and I was with Gary Russell for some other purpose. We were talking about doing some audio plays about something else, which I won't go into because that still might happen. And this was 2005, around that time. And we were in the Two Brewers pub, just off near Equity offices. And we were chatting away, and I was saying about writing my books and things. And Gary said, you should write a Doctor Who. I said, I would bite your arm off to write a Doctor Who. And he goes, well, you're commissioned. And that was it. when I tell people that, they think, my God, you've got to go through competitions now and like sort of hierarchy of like 50 people to get to that level. But I literally just had a hotline to Gary, who I've known for years and years and years. And it was as simple as that, really. So I said, yes, absolutely. And I think my second thing was, can I write for Colin Baker, please? Was my hope. And he said, I'm sure we can arrange that. And that was that. So, yeah.
Did he give you any brief, or was it pretty much over to you?
No, we talked about it, and it went back and forth. And I'm sure you talked to people before about this, but you have to do like an episode breakdown, so 4-episode breakdown, just a paragraph on each one, and an overview of the plot and where the Doctor is going to start and end up, basically. And so we bounced a few ideas back and forth. I like the idea of doing Medicinal Purposes was the first one, which is all about Burke and Hare, the grave robbers, body snatchers. I like the idea of that because I wanted Colin's Doctor to almost be on their side for some of it, because they were doing stuff that was good for medical research. So they weren't black villains. They were sort of grey, because although they were nasty, they were doing stuff that was going to help, generations to come. So I like that aspect of it. And Colin liked that too, so that was helpful, because it's always good to have your Doctor on board. And that was it, really. So we bashed that back and forth, and I did the breakdown, and Gary said, yeah, go and write it, and I wrote it, and it wasn't much. I mean, Gary was very good. He would sort of blue pencil stuff if he thought it was out of style, and more importantly, Colin would do the same thing. I remember him calling me up and saying, my Doctor wouldn't say that, and I said, well, Colin, in that case, rewrite it, because you know this character better than I do. So that was lovely to have that sort of endorsement, and sort of very mild collaboration on a couple. I think it was one line he wasn't happy with, and he tweaked a couple of words in it, and that was that. But pretty much what I sat down and wrote and emailed Gary was what you hear on issue whatever it is, 60, I think, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah.
Had you been to Edinburgh? Because it feels very vivid to me. Having, obviously, as I've been there, as you could probably tell from the accent.
Quite, yes. Yeah, you're closer than I am to it. Yes, I've been there. Well, because of the festival, of course. So my day job is comedy writing and being a sort of stand-up comedy historian. So I've been going to the Edinburgh Fringe in August every year, pretty much, apart from maybe one for the last sort of 25 years, probably. So I know it in the madness of the festival, although I have been back in when it's quieter, and it's as any comedian knows who goes outside of August, it's a completely different city when the Fringe is decamped. But I love it. And there's a real, obviously steeped in history, but it's so sort of timeless. The council there, they really look after their heritage, and as I said, because the whole commission started in the pub, it made sense to set a lot of the action in the pub. So the last drop is still there. So I've drunk in the pub. It's a real pub, folks, in the play, the last drop, and not called the last drop because it's the last drop of alcohol. It's the last drop because back in the day, the gallows were outside the window of the pub. So it's the last drop that you have as the noose lowers you down. So yeah, so I'm glad you said that, because I hoped it sort of it comes across that there's a knowledgeable backstory to it, because yeah, I love Edinburgh. So it was a sort of dark love letter to Edinburgh, really.
Very vivid characters as well, using a pair of murderers. Could I sound any more Scottish?
There's been a murder. Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody, apart from the Doctor and Evelyn, everybody is a real character. Yes, even I'm not going to give it away, but even the real baddie is a real character. So yes, yeah. So that was that. And I mean, but I didn't want to. It's very easy as a writer when you only got 95 minutes to play with, an hour and 40, whatever it was, to play with. I didn't want to get too bogged down in exposition of it. So it's a sort of Ladybird book, history of Burke and Hare. That's how I saw it. It's really just like sort of touchstones of those very famous moments when they're first getting very drunk on cheap booze and working out that it's quite profitable to bash old ladies on the head, and just those moments. So like I say, it was a Ladybird sort of history of it, really, which is all you need for Doctor Who, to be fair. You just need some very vivid sort of baddies, and the good Doctor, just bumbling into the situation and quickly working out something's not quite right here. So that was it really. It's an absolute joy. I mean, and Colin is such a brilliant actor and so engaged with it and so passionate about Doctor Who that it was just a joy to be in, because all the writers are very luckily invited to the now legendary Big Finish recording sessions with their legendary food, and you're just sitting around in the green room, and when they're in studio, they're in studio, and you're just sitting there chatting to whoever's there, so it's lovely. And on that first one, Medicinal Purposes, a young chap, you won't have heard of him, but an actor called David Tennant was playing Daft Jamie, who's a real character. I know, right? Yeah. Whatever happened to him? He's very good as well. It's a shame. He could have gone far. But he was playing Daft Jamie, who was a real character, who was a bit of a sort of a simpleton, but he was a friend of all the Edinburgh ladies of the night. So he was great, and I'd met David. I mean, you knew David fairly well because of the convention, because he was one of us. He is one of us. He's a fan of it all. So he was at conventions just as a mate. And I think Gary cast him. I think he was doing a few bits and pieces for Big Finish around then. I think he was popping up in all sorts of plays because he loved it so much. And he came in and played Daft Jamie, and it was a delight. Yeah, I remember that first conversation about the play, and he said, "I love the script, Rob. It's really great." And who's playing Dr. Knox? Because yeah, I mean, you've heard it. I hope people have heard it by now. It's been how long enough? Dr. Knox is the sort of the proper baddie of it. And I said, Leslie Phillips, he's a mate of mine for 25 years. And he said, Leslie Phillips? You mean, what, Leslie Phillips? I said, yeah. He said, Leslie Phillips. I said, he's in the studio now. He's doing a scene with Colin. Leslie Phillips is in this. I said, yeah. He said, have I got any scenes with Dr. Knox? He's going through the script. And I said, I think you've got one scene right at the end when you're dead in a sack. He goes, oh, great, that'll do. I'll take it. So that was that. But no, it was a great fun, and that's the beauty of Big Finish then and now, is that they have a real atmosphere of fun, and I think you can hear that in the recordings. We're having a ball, behind the scenes, and the actors in front of the microphones are just having so much fun doing it. So it's very infectious, that enjoyment.
How did Leslie find coming into the crazy world of Doctor Who? Did he tell you afterwards?
Yeah, he did. Well, I've known him a long time. So we were doing. I'll tell you how that happened. There was another actor I won't mention who I suggested to Gary Russell, who if you're clever and you know your comedy heritage, you might be able to work out who this is. But it's a left field jump to Leslie Phillips. Let's put it that way. So I was at Pinewood Studios working with Leslie Phillips on a box set of his films for ITV DVD, doing audio commentaries, Doctor in Trouble and A Very Important Person, and one other one, I think. Don't Just Lie There, Say Something. So there was a box set coming out for that Christmas, and I was just, I think Gary phoned and said he was sending something to me about the play or something, and he said, well, I said, I'm sat in the bar in Pinewood Studios with Leslie Phillips at the moment. He goes, what? He said, are you? I said, yeah. He said, would you ask him if he wants to play Knox? And I said, that's a great idea. That's a genius idea. So I basically, over a large gin and tonic, said to Leslie Phillips, I'm doing this radio play, Leslie. There's no money in it, but would you be in it? He goes, yes, dear boy. He's such an actor manager. He said, yes, send me the script and I'll do it. And I said, what, you're not going to read it first? He goes, no, just send me, I'll do it. It's all right, what is it? I said, it's usually 2 days in studio. And I think they did all of Leslie's in 1 day, I think. Pretty sure they did 1 day, because even then he was quite elderly. He was an elder statesman of theatre, so he would have been probably just before his 80th birthday, I think. And I posted in the script, not emailed. I posted in the script, proper old school, and he phoned me up probably the moment he got it, and he just put it through. He said, "I've got an awful lot of dialogue. I love it." So he came in, because he'd have to learn it, of course, right? Because it's radio, so you just have to read it, or act it rather, perform it. And he came in and he was brilliant, and everybody loved him because he's a sweetheart, and that was that really. And him and Colin worked really well together too. There's a real sort of friction there. I always likened it to it's like two stags at dawn. They're sort of, because at each one ups their performance because the other one's being quite good, and then the other one's trying to get better, and that's what I wanted, because it really is a sort of tussle between the two of them. So yeah, it was a dream casting. I mean, the other actor was a brilliant actor, but forgive me, Leslie Phillips. If you had told me when I was like, 12 12 years old watching those carry-ons and Doctor films on telly, that one day that man would be reading my lines, I would not have believed you. But there we go.
It's so dark and funny at the same time. You must have been pleased with the way it all came out in the end when you got to hear the finished version.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, because I don't have any say in it. Of course, it's Gary's responsibility. He cast it. I've pretty much cast it all, I think, and he obviously directed it. And I said I was there, but I couldn't sort of jump. Stop! That's not the way I wrote that line. You know, the writer's got the least input in terms of when it's actually on the floor happening. So to listen to it all together, I mean, the cover design is beautiful too. The cover looks like a sort of Amicus poster, and the whole sound design of it is lovely. And I was there's a little. I don't know. It's old. It's a vintage one. There was a thing. What was that one that was it Flip Flop? The one where was Sylvester one, and where you could listen to it in any order. I think it was Flip Flop. Anyway, I want to sort of. There's a Monty Python record where cleverly did it in two grooves. So sometimes you missed this 20 minutes of material you would miss if you put the needle on the wrong groove. And I like the idea of someone thinking they've made a mistake and put the disc in again, the second disc, because episode 3, disc 2, starts exactly the same as episode 1. Apart, I think for about a minute, it's exactly the same, which is intentional. It wasn't me sort of being cheap and just cut and pasting dialogue. I was trying to sort of subtly play with the audience's mind on that, so that all came across really, really well as well. And it was fun. I've not heard it for a long time. I actually listened to it again after this, but I haven't played it probably since I first got it. But I was very proud of it, and still remain very proud of it. And I still do get nice sort of comments from people on Twitter who've just discovered it or rediscovered it. So that's lovely, really. It's nice to be a small cog in this amazing universe we call Doctor Who. I mean, I was sitting with, I was doing a signing with Leslie Phillips, probably maybe not even about this, about just general comedy signing stuff. Maybe about 2 years after we did it, maybe 3 years after we did these, and some fan came up with a CD of it and asked me to. I said, "Well, come up, delighted." And this guy had this wonderful poster, like huge poster of all these Doctor Who people that he'd had for years. He had John Pertwee signed it, obviously at least 20 odd years ago. And he asked me to sign this, and I said, "Seriously, you sure you want me to sign this?" He goes, "You're a Doctor Who writer." I said, "Yeah, yes, I am." Okay, so it still thrills me that I'm part of it, a small part of it. So yeah, love it. Love all of it.
So that, for me, is a real gem of a story. I remember at the time, I liked it, probably because of the Scottish content and the fact that I could visualise that was something you mentioned earlier. You can absolutely see this. You can visualise the streets of Edinburgh, dark, cobbled, at night. We've no doubt both seen them on nights out, and you do get a good idea. Obviously, we're better lit these days, but there is that sort of feeling of an approaching danger.
Yeah. There's this thing about Edinburgh, as I said, that it lends itself to ghost walks, and it's, supposedly one of the most haunted cities in the world. But I could literally trace my steps through lots of these streets too, because that was the route that I took to walk to university in the mornings. And like everyone who lives in beautiful historic cities, you really don't pay attention to what you're walking past every day. I would walk past the little statue of Greyfriars Bobby just off the Grassmarket and at Candlemaker Row and top of Chambers Street, and you would see people standing around to get their photograph taken, and you would just be kind of out of the way, But yeah, it's such an atmospheric city, but you do feel I'm going to say the hand of the dead. Sounds a little bit.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
overblown, but yeah, you do kind of, that kind of presence, that touch on the shoulder. I know I was starting to talk with this accent.
I thought you turned into Donald Pleasance.
Someone from Edinburgh. Hi. Yeah,
you can.
You'll have had your tea.
Salt and sauce.
And all the other terrible stereotypes of Edinburgh people that we in the West Coast delight in circulating. And
I think you'll find also, you mean the superior coast?
Yes. Indeed, the West is best.
If you think that the East Coast is better, please send an email to peter@theearth2podcast@gmail.com, and he will probably conduct a poll and send us the results. So, which is your favourite coast of Scotland? Send Peter an email, and we'll feature that in an episode very soon. So yeah, I think, in conclusion, I think this is a real gem. It's very underrated. It's often overlooked. I think people often think of the first 50 Big Finish releases as being the one that's full of all the classics, but there are so many good stories in there, that came after that are so worth a second listen. I mean, this one, only £3.99 is a download only. Fantastic value.
It makes sense. I mean, I suppose the stories from this point onwards kind of came up against the increasing excitement around the return of the show. I can barely remember what that felt like, but yeah, I suppose lots of people's minds were turning to the slow drip of information that was coming out about the production. This, I'm trying to work out where this fitted into that particular timeline. This would have been after the announcement that it was coming back.
Because I think this is around the time when Big Finish sales started to drop off a bit, because people were starting, TV series is coming, we don't need Big Finish, and numbers started to dwindle. It saw the end of the 8th Doctor ongoing arc in the Divergent Universe, which wrapped up 2 series early. Then instead of running for 4, it only ran for 2.
Right.
And there were quite a lot of changes because Big Finish were reacting to what was going on, because they wanted ongoing adventures that anybody could pick up and access at any time. So there was that change, and sales were definitely dropping. I remember Gary Russell saying that there was a while they were wondering, are we going to be able to keep going? But obviously, thankfully, things did pick up, and look at the Empire Big Finish is now.
Yes, indeed. It has struck back.
It has. And of course, David Tennant would come back and play some more rogues. This was one of only 2 monthly range rogues that he had. The other being Feltvable Kurtz in Colditz.
Yeah.
He's not very nice in that one at all. And of course, he was Galinar in Dalek Empire, and he has a one-line performance in Cyberman, episode 1, the Big Finish spin-off, which he literally phoned in because he left a message on Nick Briggs's voicemail, and Nick had to record it and then put it onto the CD, because he was in a spaceship, so it was fine, but the quality wasn't perfect.
Some of our best performers have only contributed one line to audio dramas, it has to be said.
That's very true.
Thinking of no one in particular?
Yep, absolutely. Not at all thinking of the R2 podcast and its recent fantastic run of stories looking at the Justice group of people against King Cole. So yes, have a look at that. The R2 podcast episodes started to drop from the 12th of February, and there's 3 of those, so enjoy those, people, because there's some really outstanding performances there, particularly the one-liners. So there we go.
Yeah, real gravitas.
Indeed.
I think. Or gravitas. So. Is that still a thing?
No, it's not.
We've moved on from that.
Yeah,
right,
but some of us moved on from it the second it was said, actually, for the first time, but I didn't find it funny in the slightest.
Poke the bear.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, sorry, Yogi. And John Yogi Bear, the inventor of television.
Indeed.
So, quite.
Let's milk those Scottish connections.
Absolutely. Talking of Scottish connections, if people want to connect with us, they can get in touch with us via Facebook. We are on social media at Power of 3 Pod on Twitter and at Finished Scene on Blue Sky. And of course, you can find John and I on social media if you want to look us up on the Twitter as well. So,
is it worth it though? That's what
was it worth it?
In my case, I'm just saying, is it worth it? I'm not sure it would be a good use of your time, but I am on there.
Yeah. Go on, find
shouting the occasional bits of nonsense and mostly retweeting things.
And lots of wisdom as well. Plenty of wisdom. You're a very wisdomous man, John.
Very wisdomous, yes. Very wisdomous to us all.
Of course, this is the time of the podcast where we play it with a song, but this is one where I think I pre-warned you that I actually have a song ready for this one.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, I'm glad to...
How often do you get songs about grave robbers?
Not enough, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, you might be surprised to know that I've actually got a song about grave robbers.
Wow.
We're talking about resurrectionists. And this is... you'll probably not be surprised in the slightest to know it's a Pet Shop Boys song. And it's a song all about the grave robbers who provided cadavers to the medical students. And it's actually inspired by Sarah Wise's 2004 book, The Italian Boy, Murder and Grave Robbing in 1830s London, which was itself based on a criminal case. And there's lyrics like, we all got to earn ourselves a little living. All it takes is a little bit of digging.
Right.
And we don't bring them back to life, but we do bring them back from the dead. So,
It's catchy and educational.
It most certainly is, John. So, yes.
Good.
We shall leave you with Pet Shop Boys and the Resurrectionists. So, until next time, I've been Kenny Smith.
And I've been... Oh, who have I been? I've been John Boland. I'm going to say I've been John Knox. A completely different person. I've been John Boland. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.